Emily Carter had spent most of her life learning how to carry more than her fair share, not just as a mother, but as someone quietly holding together a world that often seemed ready to fall apart. At 28, Emily's days were a delicate balancing act. 2 jobs, countless late nights, and a little girl named Lily who was everything to her. Lily had a laugh that could light up the darkest mornings, and eyes that always seemed to ask, "Mom, are we going to be okay?" And Emily always promised they would be. But today felt different. Today, Emily wasn't thinking about bills or groceries or which shift she could pick up next. Today, she was thinking about love, or maybe just the possibility of it. A blind date arranged by a friend who swore they had found someone perfect for her. Someone who could see past the tired clothes, the worn-out shoes, and the endless responsibilities. Someone who could see her. Emily had spent so many years putting others first, hiding her own dreams under piles of practicality. She wasn't used to hoping, really hoping, for something just for herself. But tonight, she allowed herself that. She smoothed down her hair, adjusted the simple dress she had saved for occasions that felt special. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed wealth or glamour. Just her. And yet, even as she stood in front of the mirror, taking a deep breath, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered what it always seemed to whisper. "Who are you kidding, Emily? Someone like him, someone like this, it's not for you." She tried to shake it off. She had rehearsed this moment in her head 1,000 times. She imagined laughter, light conversation, maybe even sparks. But now, as she clutched her handbag and stepped out into the crisp evening air, Emily felt the weight of every fear, every insecurity pressing down on her chest. The streets of the city were alive with lights and sounds, a world that seemed just a little out of reach for someone like her. And there it was, the restaurant. Upscale, elegant, exclusive. Just the kind of place that made Emily's stomach tighten, not with excitement, but with worry. She reminded herself that she deserved this. She deserved a chance. And for a fleeting moment, as she walked through the doors, Emily allowed herself to believe that maybe tonight everything could be different. Emily stepped through the heavy doors of the restaurant and immediately felt the weight of the place pressed down on her. The polished floors, the sparkling chandeliers, the quiet hum of conversation. It was everything she had imagined and everything she feared. She straightened her back, clutching her handbag just a little tighter. Tried to remind herself that she belonged here as much as anyone else. The maitre d' looked up as she approached. He was tall and impeccably dressed, with an expression that suggested he could detect a mistake from a mile away. And then he looked at her. Really looked. His eyes scanned her simple dress, the well-worn shoes, the modest handbag. A faint flicker of judgment passed across his face, like a shadow, subtle but unmistakable. "Table for one?" Emily asked softly, her voice a little shaky. The maitre d' cleared his throat and gave a look that made her stomach sink. "I'm afraid we don't have anything available not for you." Her heart dropped. She opened her mouth to explain, to say it was a blind date, that someone was meeting her, but he barely let her get a word out. "Perhaps you should come back another time, dressed appropriately," he added, with a polite cruelty that made it worse. Emily's cheeks burned. She tried to keep her composure, tried to force a smile, but she could feel the eyes of the diners around her. Whispers floated through the air, soft at first, then more audible. Some guests giggled. Others exchanged looks that made her feel even smaller, like she was an intruder in a world that wasn't meant for her. She swallowed hard, her throat tight. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the door, telling herself to leave before she broke down. She had faced hard days, long nights, rejection of all kinds, but never like this. Not in front of a crowd, not in a place that was supposed to feel special. She clenched her fists, trying to hold herself together. Maybe this had all been a mistake. Maybe people like her just weren't meant to have nights like this. She imagined herself walking away and never coming back, swallowing her disappointment, resigning herself to another lonely night in a small apartment with Lily asleep in the next room. And yet, even in that moment of humiliation, a tiny spark of hope refused to die. She had come this far. She had dared to dream that maybe, just maybe, there was someone out there who could see her for who she was. Not her worn shoes, not her tired eyes, but her heart. She closed her eyes, took a deep, trembling breath, and stepped toward the street, ready to escape the embarrassment and the whispers. She didn't notice the sleek, black car pulling up just a few steps away. She didn't notice him yet, but the world was about to shift in a way she could never have imagined. Emily pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the restaurant door, the polished surface doing little to soothe the burning humiliation on her skin. The world outside, the lights, the laughter of other couples strolling by, felt like a cruel mockery. She had dared to hope, and the universe had swiftly, publicly put her back in her place. She squeezed her eyes shut, a single, hot tear escaping down her cheek. It was time to go home. To forget this night had ever happened. The sound of a car door closing, smooth and expensive, cut through her despair. She didn't look up. It wasn't for her. Nothing in this part of the city was for her. But then a voice, calm, firm, and unsettlingly close. Emily? Her eyes flew open. A man stood just a few feet away, having emerged from a sleek black sedan. He wasn't just handsome. He carried an aura of unshakable authority, a quiet confidence that made the bustling street seem to slow down around him. His gaze was fixed on her, and in his eyes she saw not pity, but a dawning, cold recognition of what was happening. She could only stare, her mind reeling. I'm sorry, she stammered, her voice thick with unshed tears. Do I know you? But he was no longer looking at her. His attention had shifted to the scene inside the restaurant, to the maitre d', who was now watching them with a faint, smug curiosity. And in that moment, something in Daniel's posture shifted. The calm solidified into something steely, something dangerous. He didn't wait for her answer. He moved past her, pushing the heavy door open with a purpose that made the maitre d' straighten up. Would you care to explain what is happening here? Daniel's voice was deceptively quiet, a low rumble that carried an unmistakable edge. The maitre d' offered a patronizing smile. A simple misunderstanding, sir. Nothing for you to concern yourself with. This individual was just leaving. Daniel didn't return the smile. His eyes narrowed. This individual, he said, enunciating each word with chilling precision, is my guest. Her name is Emily Carter, and I am asking you why you made her leave. The maitre d's smile wavered. He recognized Daniel now, not as the owner, but as someone perhaps more powerful in that moment. A man of immense influence, a regular whose patronage and connections were the stuff of legend among the staff. A flicker of panic replaced the smugness in his eyes. Mr. Evans? Sir, I had no idea, he stammered, his composure cracking. There was no reservation under that name. And, well, frankly, her attire, our standards. Your standards? Daniel interrupted, his voice dropping even lower, forcing the man to lean in to hear him, cowering in the space between them. Let me be very clear. I have brought CEOs, investors, and celebrities to this table. I have recommended this establishment to people who could buy and sell this block with a single phone call. For years, you have welcomed my business, my influence, and my money. He took a single step forward, and the maitre d' took an involuntary step back. And tonight, Daniel continued, the quiet fury now unmistakable, you have chosen to apply your standards to the one person whose respect I value above all of them. You looked at her and saw what she lacks. I look at her and see a strength you will never understand. You have not only insulted her, you have insulted my judgment. You have embarrassed me profoundly. The maitre d' was ashen, his mouth opening and closing without a sound. The other diners had fallen completely silent, their forks suspended midair. Daniel didn't wait for an apology. He had rendered the man speechless. He turned on his heel and walked back to the doorway where Emily stood, frozen, her hand pressed to her mouth. He extended his hand to her, his expression softening from its icy anger into something warm, protective, and utterly sincere. "Emily," he said, his voice now gentle, yet still carrying the weight of his authority. "Please, come back inside. This restaurant, this table, this night, it belongs to you, and no one has the right to make you feel otherwise." Her hand trembled as she placed it in his. It wasn't just a touch that sent a shock of warmth through her. It was the words. The one person whose respect I value above all of them. He wasn't just saving her from humiliation. He was elevating her. He was telling everyone in that room, and most importantly, telling her that she was worth more than all of it. As he led her back inside, past the utterly defeated maitre d' and the stunned, silent patrons, Emily felt the ground solid beneath her feet for the first time all evening. The whispers now felt different, not of judgment, but of awe. He guided her to the best table, pulling out her chair for her. As she sat, her eyes met his, and she saw no trace of the anger from moments before. She saw only admiration and a quiet promise that the worst was over. The maitre d', scrambling to recover, hurried over with menus. Daniel didn't even look at him. "We'll both have the chef's tasting menu," he said, his gaze never leaving Emily's. "And we are not to be disturbed." In the quiet that followed, Emily felt the last of her defenses begin to crumble. The world hadn't just given her a knight in shining armor. It had given her a man who saw the queen she was, even when her crown was invisible to everyone else, including herself. Emily sat at the table, still catching her breath, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of the fine linen napkin, as if grounding herself in reality. She couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Just moments ago, she had been humiliated, ready to leave the restaurant in tears. And now, here she was, seated at the best table, across from a man who had not only defended her, but who seemed to truly see her. Daniel settled into the chair opposite her, his expression softening. There was no arrogance in his eyes, no condescension, only a quiet admiration, like he was looking at something precious and rare. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle, almost careful, as if he knew how fragile this moment was for her. Emily hesitated, unsure how to respond. Part of her wanted to laugh. Part of her wanted to cry, and part of her still felt the sting of the whispers and judgment she'd faced earlier. I think so," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just a lot to take in." Daniel nodded, leaning back slightly, giving her space while still holding her attention completely. "I can imagine," he said softly. "No one should have to go through that. You didn't deserve it, not for a second." She looked down at her hands, then back up at him, noticing for the first time the warmth in his hazel eyes, the quiet strength in his posture. Something about the way he spoke, with such calm confidence and genuine care, made her chest feel lighter than it had in years. I don't know why anyone would think," she trailed off, shaking her head. "Because the world is quick to judge what it doesn't understand," Daniel said, a gentle smile tugging at his lips. "It's easier for people to assume someone doesn't belong than to take the time to see who they really are. But I don't do that. Not with you." Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Not about her life, her struggles, or the long hours she worked to give Lily a better future. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she just looked at him, searching for a hint of insincerity. But there was none. Daniel reached across the table and lightly touched her hand, a gesture that was both protective and tender. "Emily," he said, "I don't care about the dress you're wearing or the shoes on your feet. I care about the person you are. Your strength, your courage, the way you've kept going, even when it wasn't fair. That's what matters." Her chest tightened as tears threatened again, but this time they weren't just from humiliation. They were from relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming realization that someone could see her value without asking her to prove herself first. Someone's never said that to me," she admitted quietly, her voice trembling. Daniel's smile grew warm and steady. "Then let me be the first," he said simply. "I see you, Emily, all of you, and I admire every bit of it." She laughed softly, a little broken, a little incredulous. "I don't even know how to respond to that," she whispered. "You don't have to," Daniel replied, his tone gentle, encouraging. "Just know that you're seen. You're valued. And tonight, I want you to enjoy this without worrying about anything else." Emily looked around the elegant restaurant, the fine china, the soft lighting, and then back at him. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to truly believe it, that she deserved this moment, and that someone could admire her not for what she lacked, but for who she was. As they began talking, sharing small stories about their lives, their laughter started to fill the space between them. The earlier tension faded, replaced by curiosity, warmth, and a growing sense of connection. Daniel listened, not just politely, but with genuine interest. He asked questions about Lily, about her jobs, about her dreams, and he responded with thoughtful insights and encouragement. Emily found herself opening up in ways she hadn't allowed anyone to in years. She spoke of exhaustion, of fear, of the quiet hope that maybe one day things could be better. And Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't judge. He simply listened, admired, and responded with kindness and understanding. By the time the appetizers arrived, Emily felt something shift inside her. The walls she had built so carefully over the years were starting to crumble. Not because he forced them down, but because his admiration, patience, and warmth made her want to let them go. For the first time, she didn't have to be strong or perfect. She could just be herself. And in that moment, seated across from him in a restaurant that had once felt impossible to enter, Emily realized something profound. This was more than just a night out. This was a turning point, a moment where she could see that love, respect, and genuine care weren't just things she read about in stories. They could be real, and they could find her, even in the most unexpected ways. The initial tension of the evening began to melt as Emily and Daniel settled into the rhythm of conversation. The earlier embarrassment, the whispered judgments, felt like a distant memory, replaced by something warmer, something real. For the first time that night, Emily allowed herself to relax, to laugh, to feel safe. They shared stories, small, seemingly ordinary stories at first. Daniel spoke of his childhood, of the lessons he had learned from both failure and success, his voice steady but tinged with humility. He didn't flaunt his wealth or achievements. Instead, he talked about the people he had met, the moments that shaped him, the quiet joys he had discovered along the way. Emily found herself laughing, genuinely laughing, at his dry humor, the little quirks in his storytelling. And then, gradually, the stories turned toward her. She told him about Lily, about the struggles of raising a child on her own, about the exhaustion and the small victories, the quiet moments that made it all worth it. Daniel listened like he was hearing something sacred. He asked questions, not out of politeness, but out of true curiosity. He wanted to understand her life, her world, her heart, and in that way, he made her feel seen in a way that no one had in years. "You really do work so hard," he said, his tone soft, almost reverent. And you do it all with such grace. I don't know how you manage it." Emily shook her head, half embarrassed, half incredulous. "Grace? I'm barely keeping together most days," she admitted, a shy smile tugging at her lips. "Sometimes it feels like I'm just surviving." Daniel reached across the table, lightly brushing her hand. "Then surviving is exactly what makes you remarkable," he said. "It's not easy and it shouldn't be, but the fact that you keep going, that you care so deeply, that's what truly matters." She felt her throat tighten at his words. No one had ever said anything like that to her, not about her struggles, not about her sacrifices. She wanted to believe him, but part of her still braced for disappointment, for judgment, for rejection. But it never came. Instead, he smiled at her, patient and kind, giving her permission to let her guard down. As the meal progressed, they discovered shared interests and unexpected commonalities, a love for quiet Sunday mornings, an appreciation for small acts of kindness, dreams that had been postponed or shelved but were still alive, whispering in the corners of their hearts. Every laugh, every shared glance, every thoughtful question built a bridge between them, connecting them in ways neither had anticipated. At one point, Emily laughed so hard that tears filled her eyes. Daniel reached for a napkin, his gaze warm and full of care. "See? You don't have to hold back with me," he said. "I want to know all of you, even the messy, imperfect parts." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time that evening, she felt something shift deep inside her. The fear, the anxiety, the years of self-doubt, they all seemed to fade, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of trust. For the first time in a long time, Emily realized she could be seen, fully and unapologetically, and still be accepted. Daniel didn't just admire her strength. He valued it. He didn't see her struggles as burdens. He saw them as proof of her courage. And slowly, Emily allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this night wasn't a fleeting moment of kindness. It could be the start of something meaningful. By the time dessert arrived, the conversation had deepened. They spoke of dreams. Emily of building a stable, loving life for Lily, of finding moments of joy despite hardship. Daniel of finding someone who could share in life's simple pleasures, someone genuine and kind. In each other's words, they recognized a rare honesty, a quiet vulnerability that made both of them lean in closer, not physically, but emotionally. As the evening drew to a close, Emily realized she was smiling without thinking, laughing without holding back, and feeling a warmth that had been missing from her life for far too long. She glanced at Daniel and saw reflected in his eyes the same sense of connection she felt, the beginning of trust, admiration, and maybe even hope. For Emily, it was more than just a dinner. It was a glimpse of a world where she could be herself, where her struggles didn't define her worth, and where someone could value her for the person she truly was. And for Daniel, it was a chance to see her light, her resilience, and her heart, and to recognize that sometimes the people who seem most ordinary on the surface are extraordinary in ways the world rarely notices. That night, in a restaurant that had once seemed intimidating and unwelcoming, Emily felt seen. She felt respected. And for the first time in a long time, she felt the possibility of something beautiful unfolding. A connection built on admiration, understanding, and the quiet magic of truly being seen. Weeks had passed since that unforgettable night at the restaurant. But for Emily, the memory still felt like it had happened yesterday. Every time she thought of it, she remembered the way Daniel had looked at her. Not with judgment, not with pity, but with genuine admiration and respect. And now, those feelings had grown into something deeper, something steady and real. That afternoon, Emily found herself nervously tidying her small apartment, glancing at the clock more times than she could count. Today, Daniel was coming over to meet Lily. Her stomach fluttered with a mix of excitement and apprehension. She wanted Lily to like him, wanted her daughter to feel safe with this man, who had brought so much warmth into her life. But she also worried, what if Lily didn't take to him? What if her little world, so carefully balanced, couldn't accommodate someone new? When the doorbell finally rang, Emily's heart leapt. She opened the door to see Daniel standing there, casually confident, a gentle smile on his face, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Hey," he said softly, holding out the flowers. "For Lily and for you too, I suppose." Emily laughed, a little nervous, and took the flowers. "She'll love them," she said. "And thank you." Daniel's eyes crinkled at the corners as he stepped inside, his gaze sweeping over the modest apartment. But there was no judgment, only curiosity and warmth. "It's perfect," he said simply. "It feels lived in, comfortable." Emily swallowed, feeling a flutter in her chest. Daniel had a way of seeing the ordinary and making it feel extraordinary. Lily peeked around the corner, eyes wide, taking in the stranger in her home. Emily knelt down, giving her daughter a reassuring smile. "Lily, this is Daniel," she said softly. "He's the friend." Daniel crouched to meet Lily at her level, his expression gentle and inviting. "Hi, Lily," he said warmly. "I hear a lot about you. I've been looking forward to meeting you." Lily hesitated for a moment, but there was something in Daniel's eyes, a softness, a kindness, that drew her in. Slowly, she stepped closer, curiosity overtaking shyness. Daniel held out his hand, not demanding, not expecting, just offering. And Lily took it. Emily watched, her heart swelling, as Daniel knelt down to her daughter's height, speaking softly and patiently, asking her questions, listening to her answers. He didn't try to impress her with anything flashy or grand. Instead, he offered his full attention, making her feel important and heard. By the time lunch was ready, Lily was laughing, perched on a stool next to Daniel as he playfully made funny faces and exaggeratedly stirred the sauce. Emily couldn't help but smile, feeling the weight of her worries lift. This man, he wasn't just kind to her, he was kind to Lily. He respected her daughter's feelings, her space, her personality. And in that, Emily realized he wasn't just a partner for her. He was someone who could be a part of her family. Over the next few hours, they played simple games, shared stories, and even helped Lily with a small art project. Daniel's patience was endless. He celebrated Lily's victories, comforted her little frustrations, and never once treated her as anything less than remarkable. Emily's eyes welled up more than once as she watched them, feeling a warmth and peace she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Later, when Lily had gone to nap, Emily and Daniel sat together on the couch, their hands brushing, the quiet settling comfortably around them. "She likes you," Emily said softly, almost in disbelief. Daniel smiled, leaning back and exhaling. "I like her," he said simply. "She's amazing, just like her mom." Emily laughed softly, a little embarrassed, a little touched. "You really think that?" she asked, searching his eyes for even a hint of insincerity. "I do," he replied, voice steady and certain. "You've built this life for her, and you do it with so much love and courage. That doesn't go unnoticed, and it makes me want to be a part of it, in any way I can." Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. It was one thing to feel admired, to feel seen by someone in a fleeting moment of connection. It was another thing entirely to feel consistently, in a way that included her most precious treasure, Lily. And for the first time, she realized that maybe she didn't have to shoulder everything alone anymore. They sat together, talking about hopes and dreams, not just for themselves, but for the life they could share with Lily. Daniel didn't promise perfection. He didn't make grand, impossible claims. But he promised respect, kindness, and the steady presence of someone who could see both Emily and her daughter as whole and valuable. By the end of the visit, Emily felt a sense of hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Daniel had met Lily, and he had embraced her with patience, warmth, and genuine care. He hadn't just passed a test of charm or first impressions. He had earned a place in her life, not by force, but by understanding, admiration, and love. As Daniel waved goodbye and promised he would see them again soon, Emily knelt by Lily's bed and whispered, "He's a good man, isn't he?" Lily nodded, sleep tugging at her eyelids. "The best," she murmured. Emily smiled, feeling the familiar tightness in her chest ease into something lighter, something like peace, and maybe even the beginning of joy. She realized that she hadn't just found a partner. She had found someone who could share in her life, someone who could respect her struggles, cherish her strengths, and care for her daughter as tenderly as she did herself. And in that quiet moment, Emily understood something she had longed to believe. Love, true love, isn't just about grand gestures or perfect timing. It's about seeing, understanding, and valuing the people you care about. It's about choosing to be present, to be kind, and to embrace life together, even the messy, imperfect parts. For Emily, Daniel, and Lily, this was only the beginning. But for the first time in a long time, she felt certain that the three of them, together, could create something beautiful, steady, and lasting. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. And that's the story of Emily and Daniel. A reminder that kindness, courage, and staying true to yourself can lead to the most unexpected and beautiful moments in life. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales TV for more stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of the power of love and resilience. And I'd love to hear from you. What's a moment in your life where kindness or hope changed everything? Drop your story in the comments below, and let's celebrate these heartwarming moments together. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the smallest acts of courage can open the doors to the most extraordinary chapters of your life.